Today we're going to discuss distraction in meditation and come to understand what distraction is and how to benefit from distraction in our meditation practice. Firstly, I want to know, during that mindfulness of breathing practice just then, did anyone's attention wander away from the breath?
Yes. That little boy was particularly delightful. I listened to him for a long time.
I didn't hear any little boy.
No, I didn't either.
He was absolutely gorgeous because the sound of his voice was so amazing.
Okay. Did anyone's mind move with thoughts? Did anyone start thinking?
Yes.
Were the thoughts, when the thought came up, were you lost in the thought and suddenly realised, oh, I've been off thinking?
Yep.
Yeah? Did anyone have any thoughts where they were watching the breath and the thoughts kind of floated up in the background? Tried to grab their attention but didn't really grab it? Yeah? Could anyone feel the mind move off the breath to the thought?
A couple of times.
Yeah, I could too.
A couple of times? And what did that feel like?
It was like a common visitor coming.
No, but
It's like
what did the movement feel like? What did the movement feel like? I'm getting finer and finer detail here.
It was you could feel the movement of the mind. It was like a sucking.
A sucking.
Getting sucked.
And was there a feeling after the sucking?
Yeah, there was with me.
And what did that feel like?
I shouldn't be doing that. Get back to the breathing.
It's like, that's what I meant.
That's different. That's different again.
Yeah.
So what I'm showing you here is when we're observing distraction, there's a lot going on. It's not just realizing that you've been distracted, it's also looking at what goes on in the process of distraction. So if my attention is on the breath, and then suddenly I realise I've been thinking, or my attention is on the breath and suddenly I realise there's a thought going on in the background, there's actually been a mental movement that's happened there that I haven't actually seen. Now the sucking feeling, and eventually if your awareness becomes constant enough and sharp enough, like Linda mentioned, you'll feel while you're watching the breath a drawing away, a sucking away. It's like a vacuum cleaner is trying to suck your attention off the breath. There's actually this pull away from it. You're trying to hold it there and there's a pull away. And because your awareness is strong enough, you're still stuck to the object. Your concentration is strong enough, you're still stuck to it. So you have two things. You have the mind trying to pull away and the concentration sticking the mind to its object. And this is what you'll experience. Right? Notice we're down at the elemental level here, not the level of thinking and concepts. And what I'm pointing at, if you're really attentive, when that suction breaks, you'll actually get a jolt and it will go boom. The same sort of jolt that if you stretch an elastic band and then suddenly you let it go, it goes boom. It's got a boom. And when it goes boom, the attention will go to the next object. Now the tricky thing about this is we can think we're watching the breath, but the center of our attention could be on the thought. So I'll ask people and I say, could you watch the breath for the whole meditation practice? Yeah, sure, no problem. I could follow it without a break. Was there any thinking going on? Oh yeah, there was some thought, but I could watch the breath. And then I ask them, well, where was your attention? They can't answer that. The interesting thing about this, as your awareness grows, the amount in mindfulness practice, not concentration practice, in mindfulness practice, as your awareness grows, the amount of objects experienced in any moment will increase. And so that means you can experience the breath and a thought and a sound and sensations in your body and anger and all these things coming up all at the same time. But the tricky part in this practice is to know where is the center of your attention. Where is the focus of your mind? What aspect of that experience is your mind focusing on? If I'm watching, say, pain, got pain in my knee, typical meditator's visitor, I'm watching the sensations of the pain. Watching them, it's getting right into it. I'm actually getting right into it. It's just the sharpness and movement and vibration and tingling, and it's just moving around. It's like, wow, this is good. Feel my concentration building up. And I'm watching and watching. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I've got to move. And then I move my leg. What I did was I missed the focus of my mind. I thought my mind was still focused on the sensation, but something else was happening there. Aversion to those sensations was building up in the background and I didn't see it. When the aversion got strong enough, it overwhelmed my mind and I had to move. At that point I identified with it and I had to move. So I missed the shift of my attention from those sensations to the aversion. The aversion should have been the object of meditation then. Yeah? And so this is what it does. And so in understanding distraction, you start to understand how mindfulness meditation develops and how sharp our mindfulness meditation has to get, or our mindfulness has to get. So when looking at distraction, if you look at distraction, what's distraction? What would you say distraction was? What's a distraction?
Something that pulls your attention. Thoughts. Thoughts pulling your attention away.
Yeah, but what more than that? Yeah, that's right, but it's more than that.
It's thinking.
No, thinking isn't necessarily a distraction.
Anything other than what you want to concentrate on.
Yes. A distraction is any movement of your attention away from what you think you should be doing. So if I think I should be watching the breath and something pulls my attention away from the breath, then we would call that a distraction. If you're watching TV and then your partner wants to speak to you, you would call that a distraction. Because you consider the TV more important than the conversation with your partner.
That's dangerous.
That's another lesson.
Especially for a moment.
And this is where mindfulness can teach us a lot. So it's any movement of your attention away from where you think it should be. Now, as soon as you have something that's a distraction, time exists. Because as soon as your mind's distracted, you're thinking, in the past I was at this is where I should be in the future, but I'm here and I have to go back to there. This is how we're thinking, isn't it? So we're watching the breath and then a thought comes up and we're lost in the thought. Thought's bad, breath's good. Thought has taken the attention away, brought it back. I didn't say spouse is bad and TV is good. Well, it depends what's on. But this is the nature of distraction. So if you really looked at distraction, anytime we're distracted, our mind is actually angry. Anytime we're distracted, our mind is angry. Anytime we're distracted, we're averse to what we're experiencing. I want to watch this show, it's so important, but my partner wants to speak for it, so I'm going to miss it. So if you really look, that distraction, there's an anger relationship there where you want them to go away so you can watch TV. The same thing goes in your meditation practice. You're watching it and that little child's voice was just so enchanting. I just can't watch the breath because I've just got to hear it. You should like be singing in
I
Oliver
actually
Twist or something like that.
I actually purposely listened to it because I decided it sounded so good I was going to stay there.
But you missed something in it. You missed something in it. And that was your relationship to it, which was actually the object of meditation, not the boy's voice. So this is what we're looking at. Understand that distraction is always based on aversion. If being distracted is based on aversion, at that point you're no longer meditating, you're actually identifying with it and you're lost in anger. Now, if we want the meditation practice to develop, what we've got to do is understand our relationship to distraction. In mindfulness meditation practice, distraction is not the enemy of the meditation practice, it's the content of the meditation practice. Mindfulness meditation is about watching the mind move, watching the mind do what it does without interfering with it, and trying to watch it so concisely that you don't only watch that it's here and here, you also watch the transition between that and start to notice the pulling away before it goes there. It's not just here and here, there's a lot going on in between. So the more precisely you watch, the more you'll start to see this and you start to understand it. So if I'm watching the breath in mindfulness meditation and I feel the mind pulling away, what I do is I no longer hold on to it. I allow the mind to wander, but I wander, my attention follows it while it's moving. It follows it. The same if we're doing skeet shooting, you don't see the skeet come out, the skeet's here, and then suddenly you see it blow up. But there's actually a transition of a whole lot of do before it gets there. Yeah? Paying attention. So if you're missing that, not paying enough attention. But what you do is watching the breath, it goes to the thought. The thought becomes your primary, becomes your main object. So what we do is we give you the breathing as a meditation object for two reasons. The first one is the breathing has an elemental quality to it. So what it will do is it will anchor your attention in the present moment and allow your awareness to start to concentrate. Because normally our awareness is very dispersed, our energy is dispersed, we're concentrating it. When it concentrates, the mental hindrances that we talked about earlier in the year get suppressed. Remember, that's the sleepiness and restlessness, right? That's the desire and aversion, and that's the doubt. Now, they mightn't get fully suppressed just yet, but they get suppressed enough that you can actually be mindful and clear in your awareness. Your awareness starts to concentrate. Once the concentration is built up enough in mindfulness meditation, that is, you start to calm down a bit, at that time cease holding on to the breath. The breath then becomes your anchor point for the meditation. The reason you need an anchor is so you know when your attention moves. If you don't have this reference point, when your attention moves, you will not notice it. But if you have an anchor point, you know, I'm watching the breath and then suddenly I'm off on a thought. I'm watching a breath and then suddenly I'm listening to an angelic voice. I'm off on the breath and suddenly I'm feeling pain. I'm off on the breath, suddenly I'm moving. Yeah? So this is what you're doing. You're on the breath. I kept saying off on the breath. You're on the breath and you can watch movement because you have that point. And that's what you're doing. So you want to become very familiar with the breath so you become very familiar when you're not on the breath. This is what mindfulness meditation is trying to do. Then through doing this, you actually start to notice not only where your attention tends to wander to, and you notice where it wandered for joy was different to where it wandered for other people. Because we've all got fascinations with different things. But where it wanders is not important. What is important is that when it moves, you move your attention with it. And wherever your mind's center of attention is, you know it. Now, when Joy was hearing that angelic voice of that little boy, right? What she didn't notice, the attention was not on the voice. The attention was actually on the pleasant feeling. The mind was sitting on the pleasant feeling she was getting from listening to it, but she missed that. Because she missed that the attention was no longer on the sound, it was on the pleasant feeling, she became attached to that sound. She became attached to it because her mind was attached to the pleasant feeling and wanted to keep experiencing that. So this is what happens. So distraction is the practice. It's purposely the practice. It's only through watching these movements and moving with it that you can come to understand. Now, if I concentrate on one thing and fight that movement, I won't gain much wisdom. I'm fighting life, I'm fighting existence. This is a different sort of concentration. This is called momentary concentration. As the practice develops, the objects or the centre of the attention of the mind gets faster. That means it's not just, a breath for a few minutes, a thought for a few minutes, sound for a few minutes. It gets faster and faster. But it's not that the mind is speeding up, it's that your awareness is becoming more sensitive to the movements of your attention, and you realise how rapidly your attention is jumping around and how rapidly it's changing the centre of your attention. So at first we're not sensitive to that, we don't notice it moving everywhere. That's why when you're watching the breath, you can also hear sounds, you can also have thoughts going, you can also be experiencing emotions, a pain in your knee. All this stuff can be going on at the same time, but it's not. The mind is actually bouncing between all these things. It's just our mindfulness is not strong enough, so awareness is not sharp enough to pick up these subtle movements. So we only pick up the gross movements in our attention.
So what's actually happening if we're not aware that, like a few of us said, we didn't hear that child speaking or whatever else. So what's actually happening there?
What's happened there is your centre of your attention was somewhere else. So what's happened is when you might have just heard a sound, but your attention didn't turn towards it. So she's actually listened to it, attention's turned towards it, and her mind has perceived that and created a boy standing outside with an angelic voice. But the thing is, that's her perception of that. I just heard a sound. I just heard sound. And I had no attraction to that whatsoever. And so her perception has created that. In reality, she can't even know that there was a boy out there.
I was aware that I was getting pleasure out of it too, because I actually purposely went there.
But you're aware of your attachment to the pleasure.
I was aware that I was purposely going there.
Aware that you were purposely going there, or aware that your mind was going there, indulging in the pleasant feeling. What you were doing is you were full identifying with it.
Yes.
If you weren't identifying it, you wouldn't have even seen the boy.
Yeah.
And you can't know the boy.
No.
You can't even know that there was a boy out there. In reality.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So you got caught up in it. And this is the subtle change in our attention. And so this is what makes this so much fun. When you start playing with this stuff and having fun with it, you start to see, what can I actually know? You're challenging everything you believe. What can I actually know? Can we know somebody's outside? No. We can't know that. Can you know I'm speaking? What you're doing is you're seeing my lips move and you're hearing a sound and your brain is putting them together to say Stephen's up here speaking. That's the reality of it, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the truth.
What if Linda's a ventriloquist and my lips are just moving? Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot that we don't know. So start having fun with this. Start to notice it, challenge that. When there's a very subtle shift between identifying with something and observing it. And constantly, if our awareness isn't strong enough, our mindfulness isn't established enough, we will get lost in it. I've been watching myself when I get lost in stuff. When I'm lost in it, it feels very real. And I feel like I'm really aware and mindful. But then something suddenly happens and then there's like a boom. Oh, it's like a boom, like I've been kicked in my attention, shifted my attention. And it's suddenly like boom, oh, now I'm mindful. Wow, the quality of what I feel now after that is very different to the quality I was feeling when I was lost in it. But when you're lost in it, it feels very real. You feel like you're really alert, but you're not. You haven't got a clue what's going on. It's very subtle, and this is where it's fun.
Can I just ask if you are quite
Of course you
sleepy,
can. Sorry?
If you are quite sleepy,
Yes.
meditation, are you not getting the full benefit of it? Like, is it bad to get sleepy? Or
No, it's not bad. It's just what's happening.
Okay.
So the question was, is it bad to get sleepy? Are you not getting the full benefits of meditation? Not at all. Sleepiness is an object of meditation. It's one of the 5 hindrances, right? And the 5 hindrances are the objects of meditation. So when you feel sleepy, there's nothing wrong with feeling sleepy, but know you feel sleepy. Place your full awareness on sleepiness. Investigate it. What does sleepiness feel like? Notice how your awareness is very unclear when you're sleepy. Notice the awareness keeps sinking and becoming more and more dull. Put more effort in watching it become dull. See what that dullness feels like. Feel the floaty feeling of the sleepiness. Feel the urge to give into it. The very act of doing that will actually dissolve the sleepiness. So sleepiness is an object of meditation. Restlessness is an object of meditation. Anything that your attention sits in, whatever is dominant in your experience, is an object to develop mindfulness upon. This is why there is no such thing as distraction. It doesn't exist. If you're angry, anger is a fantastic object for meditation, right? Sadness is fantastic. Happiness is fantastic. Bliss is fantastic. Whatever you're experiencing, be aware this is where the center of my attention is. Remember, it's not you that's sleepy. Your mind is sleepy. Your mind is dull. Your mind is thinking. You, or I can't really say that's not quite right, but there's awareness of that thinking, awareness of the mind that's sleepy, mind that's restless, mind that's angry. This awareness persists regardless of what's happening in the mind. And this is what you'll get a stronger and stronger feeling of. This awareness can grow even though the mind is becoming more and more dull. And it kind of sounds strange at first, but look at it for yourself. When you were watching the breath and suddenly you were lost in a thought, did you go, oh, I'll just go off and think a thought for a little while? Did anyone say that?
Yeah, I did.
You decided, I'll go off and say a thought?
No, I decided I'd listen to the little
I think at that time you actually decided that you'd identify with the mind. So what I'm saying here is if you watch that, the mind went off to a thought, but you didn't actually tell it to. Your intention was to watch the breath, but the mind went and did its own thing. At that point your awareness got low and you identified with it. Boom, off it goes. It's like that. So you watch, start looking at this in your meditation practice, and we'll do it in a second. Every time your attention moves, did you tell it to move? Or is there something moving? Is your attention moving around and you're not actually controlling it? Then you'll start to understand there's something that's still here and the mind here that's moving around everywhere. Yeah? That's what you'll start to notice. And this is a quality that human beings have that other animals don't have.
Is that the difference between our working mind and our sort of consciousness? I'm not quite sure what I mean.
No, it's more like the mind can actually watch the mind. Or this consciousness can watch the new consciousness coming up can watch the, I don't know how it works.
But there's obviously two different.
You're talking about like observing something and thinking.
The human mind can actually turn around and watch itself.
Yeah.
It can watch itself. And I'm not even going to try to explain it. I'm not going to try to explain it. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to explain to you what I experience. And it's very hard when we're using normal language to explain things. It's better to say, experience it. And then you understand. But basically the mind can watch the mind.
But it's all the brain, isn't it? Like it's your brain, isn't it? Like it's very complicated.
The brain's very complicated.
That's your mind, isn't it?
Well, you can't actually experience your brain. How do you experience your brain other than through sight?
Suppose the learning.
Sight when it's removed out of your head. We can't experience our brain. What we do is we experience qualities that we associate with the brain. But really, if you look at it, you can't actually place these qualities anywhere. So what we'll do now, some of you can play with this. I would like you to see when you think, where's the thinking taking place? Is it actually taking place in your head? Or can the thinking actually be anywhere? When your attention goes out to a sound, right? Are you hearing the sound in your brain? Or is literally, it's like your attention is actually sitting outside of this room on the sound? Are you actually caught in the borders of your body, or is your attention wandering further? Very, very interesting. This is where it's a game. It's so interesting. Yeah? I hope that boy comes back.
So does Joy.
It was just the quality of the sound was so amazing. That was what I was sort of, I was also analysing the quality of the sound. I know I was.
You're identifying with it. And it feels so real when we're in it.
Yeah.
It really does.
If you didn't hear the sound, what does that mean?
It doesn't mean anything.
But your attention wasn't.
Well, we don't know that the sound was there. We're just taking her word for it.
Could have been imagining it.
I could have been imagining.
We can only know what we experience. If you didn't experience it, then in your reality, it didn't exist. Like, just because she said it existed doesn't mean it existed to us. Is this still in your head, Inez?
We can hear it. Doesn't mean anything though.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It just means in your reality it didn't exist.
Can I come at the same thing from a different direction to try and understand it?
I done one of those classes again.
No,
I thought it was...
whether you hear or you don't hear a sound, or when you meditate, I mean, as opposed to someone else who does. But I'm getting deep. Is that the more you concentrate, are you liable to be aware of more that goes on? Or the opposite, the less you concentrate, are you more aware of what goes on outside your body?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Okay, the question was that if the more you concentrate, do you actually experience less or hear less sounds and all these types of things? And the less you concentrate, the more you hear around you.
Yeah.
What there is, and I explained this earlier, there's two meditation practices or paths. One's the path of concentration, one's the path of mindfulness or awareness, right? Both of them use awareness, both of them use mindfulness. In concentration practice, what you do is you want to become more and more aware of a conceptual object. So what they do is they move towards a conceptual object. So they usually start off on the breath, but eventually when a pleasant feeling comes up, they'll focus on the pleasantness aspect, and that pleasantness is a concept. Because it's a concept and produced by the mind, it is permanent. And so focusing on that permanence, their concentration builds up on that. And you can use this, you can use mantras, you can use visualization, all these things. You're creating concepts that you're focusing on, right? In focusing on these, as the mind becomes more and more concentrated, the sense doors start to shut down. Because your attention is so fixed on one object, right? You no longer hear. You no longer smell, taste, you no longer feel your body. You no longer think and feel all those, and all those emotions and judgments and likes and dislikes and all that sort of stuff. And the mind becomes more and more secluded from the world, and the perception of your body and the room and the world disappears, and you experience intense bliss and beauty. And eventually that leads up to the concentration path and going into jhana, right? The reason why they go for a conceptual object is because it's the only way you can experience permanence in this world. If you actually focus on reality, there is no permanence. Everything is impermanent. Everything is subject to change. Everything is a constant flow of change. This is what life is about. Things come up, things go. Sound comes, sound goes. Everything comes and goes, right? In mindfulness meditation, what we do is we develop the concentration to a more shallow level. But it's not because of that concentration. And what we do is we don't fix the mind on any object. What we do is allow the mind to wander, but our job is to stay with it when it wanders, right? Then what happens is, as it wanders and our awareness grows more and more, we start to notice it wander more and more, right? But there could be many reasons why you didn't hear that sound. You mightn't have felt it, your mind might have been attracted to it, so it might have just been background noise. You might have been lost in a thought when it was happening, and so you might have just been off with the fairies and not even know what was going on. That's possible too, isn't it? Yeah?
Or you were concentrating too much in a mindfulness, when you're supposed to be doing mindfulness meditation. In actual fact, you're concentrating too much and shutting out the things that were around.
Sound's one of the last ones to go, like even at the deeper levels. So sound can, I think first jhana, sound can still pull you out, I think. That's right. So you could be, but there could have been any number of reasons. But you'll find as your concentration builds up, your attention will go out less. But there is a balance of mindfulness. What we do in mindfulness meditation, we put more emphasis on being mindful of what is happening, what we are experiencing. So we're watching that aspect of change. We're watching that flow of change and our relationship to it. In concentration meditation, we're just focusing on permanence. Yeah, we want permanence. And this is that one area that always got very confusing before, so I'm not actually really helping here at all. So in awareness meditation, yeah, I know. The questions that stopped us from doing the next sit, but that's okay. In awareness meditation, in mindfulness meditation, right, we become more and more sensitive to impermanence and change. Right? We start to see it more and more. But what you're experiencing, it doesn't matter. So whether you heard the sound or not, doesn't matter. Whatever was dominant in your experience, it's all that matters. And even if that's being concentrated and fixed to one object. Right? You just want to put that effort into being with that object. Now, in concentration meditation, they're more interested in becoming more and more tranquil and experiencing less and less. Their awareness becomes very strong, but only of one thing. In mindfulness meditation, we allow the attention to wander and we become more and more aware of many things. But these things become more and more detailed and break down more and more when we're watching it. And as that momentum builds up, the practice develops to a very, very deep level. The concentration still goes to genic level, but it's call momentary concentration rather than fixed concentration. Two different types of concentration. As we start to play with it, we'll play with it more next year as well. So I want you to be able to feel the difference between the two, right?
I think in my case, I was probably erring on the concentration meditation, but I really should have been.
It's very easy to do, and this is very easy to do. I obviously haven't made it clear enough yet between the two, and that's okay.
Yeah, I understood you at the beginning to say if there are any distractions, to focus on them. That was why I focused on the little boy, I think. So did I misunderstand you?
No, you didn't, but what happened is your mindfulness wasn't strong enough. You weren't aware of your relationship to that. So what happened is you were enjoying it.
Oh yeah, I was.
Yeah, so you were lost in it.
Yeah.
You were lost in it. I'm not saying you can't enjoy things, but what she did was she wasn't actually focusing on that enjoyment.
Yeah.
Right? On that sticky relationship to it. Yeah. So this is where it can get very subtle. Now I just want to clarify, I haven't completely confused you. At least I stop you from falling asleep. Or maybe I'm putting you to sleep. Since we actually just talked for our meditation time, but that's okay, questions are important. What I want to just clarify, is there any object, right, that can come up in your meditation practice that's a distraction?
No.
Getting agitated, is that a distraction?
Agitation is not a distraction. Agitation is a state of mind.
They're all an object.
They're all objects of meditation. In mindfulness meditation, there is no distraction. No such thing as a distraction. So it doesn't matter where your attention goes. The important thing is you stay on the horse's back and ride with it. And what you always want to be aware of as your object is not so much the object of meditation, but your relationship to it. That's what it's always about. It's not the sound, it's your relationship to it. It's not the mental agitation, it's your relationship to that agitation, or the relationship to the object that's causing that agitation, wherever your attention is sitting. Everything is an object for meditation, including not wanting to do mindfulness meditation. That is also an object of meditation. Yeah? Even aversion to Steve talking for such a long time. That's also an object. So what I'm saying, there's no such thing as distraction. Distraction only happens when you've decided this is what I don't want to experience.
Is that the attachment side of it? Is that,
Yeah, you become attached to the object.
Which is not a good thing, to get attached. Is that what you're saying?
Attachment's not a good thing or a bad thing.
But does that mean you're getting stuck to it and it's...
Nothing's good or bad. What we've got to do is no, it just means that you're judging that this is here, this is how it is, and it should always be like this.
And that's okay if you're aware of it, but if you're not aware, that's...
That's right. So, but the reality is, since mindfulness meditation is concerned with reality, reality is not fixed, it is always changing.
My feeling is where we're all struggling is our relationship with those things that are coming up. Like, for example, you mentioned there is no something.
No distraction.
No distraction.
There is no distraction.
So what we may assume is a distraction, in actual fact is not, but it's these relationships that we're unclear of.
And that's and what you said was basically it. Distraction is just a relationship to something. It's your relationship to the distraction that makes it into a distraction.
Yeah. And that's where we're all struggling.
Could I have investigated that sound without becoming attached to it?
Oh yeah. If you did, you wouldn't have even heard the boy.
Well, how does that one get that?
how could I not have heard the boy? Oh, you mean
I heard the sound, not the boy.
the
You
sound,
put the label.
not doing all the
Remember, we also
analysing
said
to
no
make it a
labelling,
boy.
and you put a label on.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, different corner.
So basically what this has done is given me next week's talk. Are we talking about relationships? Everything comes down relationships. You look at it. When you're walking down the street, right? Most people you don't really care about, as long as they're not interfering with you in some way. But then you see a friend or a family member, you have a relationship with them. So when you have a relationship with them, you're attracted to them. And that relationship keeps you stuck. Even when you separate and they walk down one way down the street, you the other way, it's almost like there's this cord or this thread between you. No matter where Linda goes in the world, there's always a thread or cord. In my mind, she's always sitting there. Right? This happens to anyone or anything you've got a relationship to. We're holding all these threads, these cords to them. They're always sitting in our mind. Always. And that's relationships. Yet there's many other people and things in this world we don't have any relationship to. So there's no cords or threads there. Yeah? So distraction is just a relationship. It's a judgment. This is not how it should be. And we've gone over time, and I'm sorry to all the people, and didn't get to do that, but that's okay. This is really important. It just clarifies me about what's not clear.